So today on the podcast, we have Ricardo Uwelde, and he is a first-gen student. He graduated from Cal State LA in 2017. He did a bachelor's in electrical engineering. Um, he's done a lot of other things, but among them, um, he's an electrical engineer in the field, and he's also a grad student. So as an electrical engineer, you worked as a contractor, and then you also worked at a company called OnRobot. You worked for AT&T for some time, and then you founded your own company named Electric Universe. He's really politically involved, and let's see what else. You're going right now to Syracuse University to do a computer science degree where you're doing an emphasis in artificial intelligence. So I think that sums it up.
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. I think you covered everything. So.
All right, let's get into these questions.
Sure.
All right. So, first question is, as part of your bachelor's degree that you did at Cal State LA, you also did an English Lit minor.
Yeah, I have an interest in the English language, and reading was like a big passion of mine. That's probably the first thing that I found interesting about school. And I was also always just better at it, better at English than, it's interesting, like on engineering, you had to be like extremely good at mathematics, but I was actually always better growing up at English for some reason. Math came later. So I loved reading. I loved writing stories, like short stories. And yeah, it's a fun, I don't necessarily engage in reading hobbies anymore. I tend to just to listen to books that I find interesting nowadays, for varied reasons. But I tend to fall asleep sometimes to books. The last one I've been listening to, I mean, people say reading, even though they're like hearing audiobooks, right? But last one, I read this book 2 days ago, like on Audible. But yeah, I've been listening to it's a little old, World War Z. You can imagine why, right? We're in this pandemic, and there's somehow this thing popped up in my feed, or I was reading something and somebody recommended it to me, and like, it's a really good book, a really good book to listen to. I'm sure it's fantastic to read too. But yeah, it's really fun and interesting considering what we're going through right now. And there's a lot of like eerie similarities in terms of like the things that are discussed in the book and like stuff that's happening right now in the pandemic. So it's always, it's always interesting to read or hear, listen to something that's relatable to your life right now. So.
Do you have like an author that you're particularly fond of?
I do. Well, before this, most of the time I spent time reading just like science and physics books. Of course, right? What an engineer.
Oh, yeah.
But like, I think the very first book that I ever, and I'll give you an author, the very first book I ever really, really, truly felt passionate about that was not like, that was scientific, was this book called Visions by this author named Michio Kaku, Dr. Michio Kaku. He's a physicist. And the book was written like sometime in the late 90s or something. And he talked about 20 or 25 years into the future, like around the time now, right? And all these things that were supposed to happen in that time in terms of technological advancement. And you imagine, like, I've always loved thinking about the future. And reading that book really inspired me to think about, I wouldn't say necessarily engineering as a discipline or something I would pursue, but just really in a creative way was really interesting and really fun to read. So yeah, Visions, Michio Kaku. He's got a whole library of books about physics of the future, physics of the mind, and they're all great. So get a chance, pick them up and listen to them or read them.
Going back to the first book that you taught, the World War Z, that's the same one that had the movie interpretation, right?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be that person now. I actually saw the movie first. Obviously, I just read the book. But in like one of these late night events that I sometimes just have, I'm like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna watch that movie. And I saw it like 10 when it came out. I don't know how old it is, and it was pretty good. But I just recently rewatched it, and of course, I had just finished reading or listening to the book. And it was an interesting movie. It was an entertaining movie, but I'm gonna say in this instance, I'm gonna be that guy. The book was better than the movie.
Better?
Sure. Yeah.
I feel like usually I agree with you there. Me personally, I usually think that the books are better. It's just like they can fit so much more about the story in there.
Yeah, it was like it's kind of like what really bothered me most about the movie was actually the special effects. I thought the story was great, but the special effects were like really outdated for like 2013 or 14, whenever that movie came out. Like the physics were all off, and I'm that guy, by the way. I'm that guy who says, you know what, those physics are off, and I just ruined the movie for everybody. Like, there's no way like a car should fly that way for that long, and there's no way a vehicle has that much fuel. I'm that person.
You're that guy to send out the email to the director, like, hey, you know what? I was watching your movie, man, and not adding up right here,
The physics of your movie, sir. The physics of your movie were absolutely horrific. Like,
it's like physics fact checking, right?
For real.
Yeah, it was still a fun movie. I'm not saying it wasn't. Watch it if you haven't seen it. It was a fun, entertaining movie, but there's just things that stand out, and it wasn't a good impression. Like the graphics were really bad, but the idea was fun. Like the idea is fun in a scary way. The idea is fun in a scary way because of the pandemic that we're in. And that's kind of how it started in the movie, as every other movie of that genre. So
it's funny how that like all of those movies suddenly became relevant. I feel like they were trending for like a really long time, and now
they
like
were. Yeah, like all this
they're
stuff
like
was
completely
the Netflix, right? Like it was like a bunch of like, what was that, Pandemic on Netflix or some other movie?
Walking Dead was coming out roughly around the same time.
Yeah, Walking Dead. So all that stuff was like really hitting it big, and obviously right now it's more relevant than ever, or at least it's interesting. It gives you a perspective on reality.
All right, so we're gonna get a little bit more boring.
Sure.
All right.
Depends who you talk to. Depends who you talk to.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will find this informative. So the next question is so like during your undergrad, I know like a lot of students they're kind of in this point where they're deciding what kind of STEM career they want to have. I know for me, like I was actually between doing mechanical engineering, and I kind of still like I think about it a lot, and I'm just like, man, I should go back and get my ME degree. But I was between mechanical engineering, mathematics, and computer science for a while. Right. So for all those students who are kind of like just starting out, or they're in the middle of like their EE degree, what would you say are the topics that you actually still like use or were really helpful to you at some point in your career?
The topics, like you mean like specific courses or topics that were covered in classes that I think are most relevant right now as an electrical engineer?
Yeah.
I'm going to say circuits. With Professor Tabrizi was really important. Like you have to be able to understand. Yeah, the shout out to Professor Tabrizi. I think she might remember me. Yeah, circuits. What else?
I'm thinking about how it took 3 tries for Juan to pass that class. Should I not say that?
What else? I would say the most of the programming classes. I took a C++ class. Obviously, extremely important. I mean, depends. Like if you wind up being an electrical or software engineer, like C++ is a language you're definitely going to see. So that was one of the most useful ones. It's an interesting question. Like I've been asked this question before, and I always feel like, yeah, really, are those the only 2 courses that you found like that are useful for your professional career? And I think it has to do with what you wind up doing, and really, it's not just the subject matter that's really important, right? And I like to say this, like it teaches you, or I feel like it expands. How do I put it in words? Your brain grows. It may not be necessarily a topic that's extremely relevant to what you're working on, but it's electricity and magnetism, or some course that that covers like really, really deep subjects. You may not need it immediately, but the fact that you sat through that for like 11, 12 weeks or whatever the time is, and really grew your brain in a way that it wouldn't have otherwise if you hadn't taken that course, right? And eventually at some point, the stuff that's covered in there in some way or another comes back and you see it. professionally. You're having a conversation with somebody, or maybe a machine needs to be purchased, and it's always something to fall back on, right? And furthermore, on this topic of this, the question of mathematics always comes up, right? Especially when you're dealing with, like, if you're tutoring kids or anybody else in general that's taking a math course. Well, what am I going to use math for, right? Like, oh, do you use math every single day? Like, what's that for? And again, it's the same thing. It's not just the fact that you may or may not use mathematics in your everyday career, right? You may not. But it's the fact that, you sat there, and you guys can relate to this, and you solved, like, enormously long and complex problems, and it took a while to understand them and write them down, and then committing all that to memory. And what I'm saying is, like, it teaches you, if you don't have it already, it improves a work ethic that you may otherwise not have developed on your own, right? And that's one of the most important things I gathered from really all the courses in the discipline, not just any specific one EE class or one mathematics class. So, did I answer your question?
Yeah, for sure. I was a math tutor for both, like, K through 12, and at some point, like, I did a couple of, like, private calculus lessons and stuff like that. But that was a question that they used to ask me all the time, and I would always just tell them the truth. Like, I would tell them honestly, like, if you're not going into a STEM major, you're probably never gonna use this math.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's hard to tell people that, but I mean, it's like, at the end of the day, like, there's certain things that going through the struggle of learning it does help you. And then as part of requirements, it's like, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of just an important topic to, like, know that you can, like, you know that you can figure it out.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, it's like you guys in your everyday life, like, you're just dropped with something on your lap, and somebody's like, just, hey, do this. Whoa, what do I fall back on? I tend to fall back on, like, hey, come on, this is challenging, but is it as challenging as those math problems for, like, that I used to solve, like, 20 steps for one problem? Is it that complex? Maybe it is. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's a little more complex, but at least I have that in the back of my head. Hey, I was able to do those. Why can't I solve this?
Yeah, I think it's definitely like how you mentioned, Ricardo, it's that discipline that you gain from it.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people mention, like, those math courses
Right.
are filters for students when they're actually going through their undergrad, whether they can make it or not. And it teaches you that problem solving characteristic that helps you throughout engineering, right? Being able to be patient and continue to progress and continue to go forward and try to answer the question. And if you can't do it, then that's the whole basis of engineering, whether it's electrical, civil, mechanical, computer. There's problem solving all the time, and that mathematics courses definitely teaches you that the hard way, for sure.
It does. And again, it's like, hey, are you going to, let's say you didn't do so well the first time around, are you going to develop the work ethic to do better the next time, right? Or are you just going to quit, essentially,
Yeah.
And the reality is, like, some people quit. A lot of people don't, but some people just quit. Sometimes it's just too much. It's too much to invest, hours and hours on end in a math problem that you may not find it to be so exciting, right? Well,
Yeah, people definitely. I remember in my first or second year of college, I lost all of my friends to math. I lost all of them. So I remember after like year two, I'm like, yo, where are these guys? They dropped out, didn't deal with the math, and I'm like, well, I guess I gotta find more friends. So
well, I'll share a story with you on that. For everybody, like, it's fun and nice to be on this side once you graduate. But I mean, I struggled. Like, as I mentioned, I was always good at English. Was better, like, my better subject. Anything related, anything where I could write about it. I was always much better at it. And I remember taking my calculus class at Castellet, the first time I've ever taken class. And I was like, oh yeah, this is fine, this is fine, whatever. And I would use the same preparing methods that I used for English, which was like read, and try to capture things, right? Didn't do so well in that first calculus class. I did very little examples, and so I knew that something had to change. It wasn't a lack of trying or a lack of investment. It was a lack of really knowing how to study for it as well. So, yeah, you're right. I lost friends too. I almost lost myself.
Rest in peace. Rest in peace. But anyways, Chris had mentioned that you were a math tutor as well. I mean, what were some of the courses that you taught? Algebra, pre-algebra, calculus 1 through 3. Um,
Well, so I was a math tutor, yeah. So I specifically tutored kids in like K through sixth, seventh, and sometimes eighth. But it was mostly students who were already behind where they needed to be, right? And so there's always this, someone, your parents come up to you or something. I was doing this while I was still in school, and there's always this. It's a challenge to try to get somebody back into the groove of things, or try to get them really where they need to be, right? Because as you guys know this, like once you fall behind in like a day's worth of math, like you're done. Like you're not gonna pay attention. The brain's not gonna capture anything else. You're gonna think you don't understand this, and that's how you wind up hating math. Like that tends to happen, right? It's not so. What I do is I just go back to with every student I ever had or every person I ever tutored. It's like at which point that you get lost. If you're in the fifth grade and it was like adding, four numbers together, or if you're multiplying, of double multiplication, or whatever it is, or division with more than one denominator, or it depends on where you got lost. What was the one thing that you just did not grasp? And I go there and I try to explain things the way that I learn things. Like I'm very methodological. I have a methodology about it, right? It has to be broken down to its smallest components. And so I just write absolutely every single step out for any student that I try to teach, or I try to get up to speed on something. And I find that it helps. Start off with some super simple examples of something, and get the confidence built up again. Get them to think that this is something that they can do, right? That this isn't something that, like, math is not this unachievable thing, or being good at math is not this unachievable goal that they can't make it because they're not good at math. And I try to tell them, hey, listen, I'm not good at math either. I just try really hard. Math does not just come to me. Like the first time I see a problem, I'm like scratching my head, like, what is this? And so I try to tell them that it's okay to not understand it the first time around, but there's a couple of things that you have to do. You have to be willing to reach out to somebody and say, hey, listen, I don't understand this. And that's another problem. It's like they don't reach out. They don't have the resources, or they've never been taught to raise their hand, or they're shy about it because they feel like they're not good at it. And so I try to get them to overcome that, to think that not being, or that being good at mathematics is not necessarily something that you're just born with, but something you develop. So um in terms of like more complex topics, I think I've always, when I understood something, like even in school, like I try to share what I know in a way that makes it understandable for me personally. And again, I like to break things down as much as I possibly can. um I gave you some calculus examples when we were just taking the first calculus courses, or getting, understanding derivatives or the integrals. It's like this stuff was like beyond the scope of anything I'd ever seen before. And but but there were also other students who experienced this the same way, and I try to, again, break things down, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm not repeating myself, but make it as simple as possible without being too wordy, and just being, write down every single possible step. If it's 27 steps, then make it 27 steps.
it seems like you're spending like a lot of time with these students, making sure that they understand each like conceptual aspect of that problem. How, I mean, that must be pretty fulfilling to be able to talk to a student, they don't understand it, spend a couple hours with them, and at the end of it they're just like, I got this, like I didn't think I would be able to do it, but now I can. Like, how fulfilling is that?
Because it's extremely fulfilling, because number one, I love to teach stuff, like, it's stuff that I'm excited about, but most importantly, I like to get kids to get, to build the confidence. Absolutely. It's really, you got to get them to really buy into your system, right? If they buy into your system and you're like, hey, listen, I'm only here to help you. I'm not here, for myself. I'm here to make sure that you understand this because I relate to you. I wasn't great at this particular portion in math. And they open up. They're like, hey, listen, this guy who's teaching me is not some math magician who just knows everything because he knows everything. Like, he actually went through a step. And when you get kids to understand a method, it may not be the first method you teach. Like, not every method works for everybody, right? It may be the second method or the third method, but I think they appreciate the fact that I try to come up with the easiest possible method for them to understand something so that they are not confused and so they don't feel like math is this complex subject that they cannot tackle. So yeah,
Right.
rewarding, absolutely.
That's awesome.
So you said that you also taught electrical engineering courses to kids?
I did. So I had this gig over at this place called the LA Clean Tech Incubator, and it was part of this sort of, it was at-risk youth, for at-risk youth, and they were like, teenagers, early 20s. And it was really to expose them to, things that they had not at that point in their lives been exposed to in terms of engineering and mathematics, and really try to get them to see other aspects of life that they may otherwise not have. And what we started doing was teaching them really basic electrical engineering topics with really amazing tools. Like I used like anything that makes electrical engineering fun, like websites called every circuit, that literally shows you circuits and LEDs, and everybody loves to work with LEDs, right? It's this fun thing that you get to do, like putting some LED, turning on LED. It's like seeing light still amazes me, like hitting a switch and it's like, oh wow, there's light, right? When you go down and break that stuff down to like batteries and LEDs and resistors, and you make something as simple as a little LED turn on, I think you'll find most of the time that people get amazed by that kind of stuff because it's fun, right? I get amazed by it. And so what we were doing is we taught them basic circuits and some basic programming using this system called Arduinos. I don't know if you guys have heard of Arduinos.
Yeah.
And so we taught them basic programming concepts, how to turn on an LED, how to rotate a motor. Because when you start to really teach them those basic things, if they're really interested in it, they'll continue and move on to other more complex things. But it's teaching those very basic things. And again, to at-risk youth who've never been presented with these kind of topics before, I found it, majority of the reception was like positive. They enjoyed what they were doing. And unfortunately, I don't know what happened to them. It was just kind of like I taught it twice. And, we were successful in having most of those kids complete the courses. But, I started working somewhere else. So I don't really know what happened with them. But I hope that they pursued it and that they're still pursuing it right now because it wasn't that long ago.
Would you say that most of the students like were able to kind of retain the complicated topics, or do you think that they kind of just like had more fun putting the circuits together and seeing what they did?
So there's always an educational goal, right? It's always this fun thing. It's like you gotta have a little bit of fun, but the end goal is to teach you how to do something. And so yeah, there was no formal testing. They weren't getting graded on this stuff, but it was like they had to build a project. And so I think most of the kids that finished the projects themselves would tell you that they understood what they were doing. Maybe not initially, but understanding about Ohm's law or some basic law like that, or basic programming in Arduino, how to create a function, how to create your own function, how to manipulate the program to send the information over to the microcontroller. Could they do that kind of stuff on their own? Did they learn those topics? I'd like to think so. I mean, they demonstrated it with their projects, but after the projects themselves, who knows? I don't know if if you're not something you're using, you might forget about it. But when we finished them, I say that most of the kids that finished those projects did so with an understanding of what they were doing and not just following along or being guided by my heavy-handed guiding by me, like, hey, push this, push that. And you can see because they answer questions, or they ask questions, or they get stuck somewhere, and just give them little hints, or really you point them to where they can find resources to figure something out. And yeah.
We interrupt this interview with an announcement that we're having a Seas Candy fundraiser, so you're able to ship anywhere throughout the U.S., and the link is on the description and on our website under active fundraisers. The profit will go towards competition and resources for aspiring STEM students, and it ends December 4th. Send someone holiday joy today.
What would you say are the topics that they like doing the most? Was it like I know that the point of the course was for them to remember what they were learning, but as far as like what like they had the most fun doing in terms of kind of inspiring them to continue going into the rabbit hole that is engineering or STEM? Like, what do you think really gets them involved and gets them like lit up?
What would get them involved, or what got them the most excited about the things that we were teaching? Because I
Yeah,
can tell you
what's the most excited?
what wasn't the most exciting was, I would say, um, they weren't too excited about listening to the lectures per se. Like, obviously, like this, they want to manipulate stuff. I think where they obviously the transistor is extremely important. So I was teaching them how to use the transistor as a switch so that they could a power MOSFET, so that they could manipulate other electronic devices that required more power than that the Arduino needed, right? And so I had to get a little bit more technical and theoretical so that they understood. And I was drawing like schematics and things of that nature on the board. And so like, you start to lose them a little bit because it's not tactile. They're not actually touching anything. But if you relate that to, if what you're drawing on the board is then something that they're going to go and do, that always helps. And obviously, it's a struggle, right? Not everybody always grasps the topic at first. But if I can give you an example of somebody named Henry, one of the kids' name was Henry. And, he was really interested in growing plants indoors. And it was something that he just wanted to do. He didn't know how to even consider to begin how to control how much water his little plant got, or how much light, simulated sunlight, his plant got. And when he realized that the things that we were talking about in the class, essentially a microcontroller, the Arduino, and a little bit of program, and some other mechanical devices like a solenoid valve, and again, the power MOSFET. And he started to put these pieces together, and he's like, hey, listen, I had this idea of making this plant system. And I'm like, you know what? You can do all of that stuff with this controller here. You can even set it to have timers so that you don't water the plant ever, or you can have it have sensors in the soil so that it measures, the amount of water that the soil has, and then it starts to water the plant for you. And that stuff started to click in his head, right? And he didn't know everything about how to program initially, but he was one of the ones that finished the program with the project. And lo and behold, he finished this project, and it was something he was really proud of. But again, whether or not they continued with it is, it's not. I don't know.
You can only do your best, right? Like, do what you can now and hope that it sticks, so that long term they're able to continue on it. So sort of kind of to steer back into sort of your career path. You worked for, you've worked for a smaller companies. You worked for larger companies, a company like On Robot and AT&T. How do you compare that sort of working for larger companies compared to smaller ones?
Well, full disclosure here. I worked for AT&T for a grand total of 8 days. And that's going to answer a lot of what you're asking me right now. But the reason for that is because I went from being essential and being needed and doing everything on my own, and like being a really critical team member, to just sitting at a desk. And I hated it. I hated working at AT&T. I thought it was, you can see this, and it was so boring. There was so many things. I'll be honest, I don't even think I got my own laptop in those 8 days. Like,
wow,
I don't have a laptop yet. I was like, well, you got to go down to this first floor, and they got to set you up with the software. And I sat there for 3 or 4 or 5 days just trying to get a laptop. My God, it was ridiculous. The what is it? What's the process? What's the this procedure called? It's just so much bureaucracy at a larger company like that. I needed to ask for permission to do this. I needed to ask for permission to do that. The software package needs to be installed by these people. You got to go down to the first floor to get that done. I'm just like, when do I actually get any work done here? And what am I supposed to do? And that's going to go on to the next part of the question. That was a technical project management role. I had no idea what I needed to do because I was stuck with a really poor manager. I'll just be honest. No one's going to see this. It was a really poor manager, and it was a really poor experience that led to a really positive experience. But to answer your question, 8 days. 8 days I was there at a larger company. Now, at a smaller company, On Robot, my God, I was needed. I was loved. I was appreciated. Hey, go talk to Ricardo about that electrical engineering problem you have, and it's a much different atmosphere. I think I enjoy it more. honestly. I enjoy more the fact that things need to get done and you're the person to do them. The expression is you have to wear different caps every day. Like you might be working on solving some electrical engineering challenge today, and you might be asked to just help a mechanical engineer finish something else another day. And I love that. I really do. I love the fact that it just gives you the ability to be at a lot of different places every single day. It's like it's cliche to say, oh, every day is different, but it really was that way. Every day was different. Every day was exciting, even though there were some days that were very tedious and very difficult and rough. But for the most part, I really enjoyed that admin and that ambient and that atmosphere of having to be just one of few team members that really pushes a company forward. And we did that in my time that I was there. We actually were able to launch a couple of products, and it was exciting, right? Like this little robotic hand, and I remember still, it's like, hey, you know what? I remember the days when this robotic hand wasn't working, and you're the electrical guy, and this is an electrical thing, and it's like, well, here you go, figure it out, and it's all on your shoulders, right? And this pressure of meeting, like this doesn't sound so exciting, like people are gonna say, and all this pressure of meeting the deadlines is really on your shoulders, and whether or not the project or the product gets launched is up to whether or not you will, come up with a solution in time. So I find it exciting. I know I'm crazy.
I totally get it. I mean, the only
Yeah.
experience I've had is working for a smaller company. I've always wondered, like, hey man, working for a larger company, like how cool and interesting would that be? But having the ability to wear those different hats, oh my goodness, it is so nice. It is so nice and refreshing every day to be able to do something like that. So I'm glad you were able to find some sort of peace on Robot as opposed to these at AT&T.
Well, to be honest, I actually left on Robot for the AT&T gig. So there's
Oh,
that. Oh, well, I didn't know what working at a big company was like. Like,
yeah, no,
as a technical, I figured, hey, I developed some really great, hard electrical engineering skills. Like, what is there to do as a technical project manager? And I was intrigued by it. So, um, you might not be asking or thinking about asking this. Like, do you regret it? I don't regret it. I think it was a decision that, I really considered thoroughly before I left. Even though I loved On Robot, I felt like I accomplished what I needed to accomplish at that company, even though I was only there 12 months a year. I felt like, I got us to where I needed to go. Well, I got us to where we needed to go. Obviously, as part of a team, but I was a critical member to that team, and I just felt like I needed something different, something else.
I'll play the devil's advocate. I feel like I'm the only person that has worked so far in kind of a larger company. Aerospace Corp is pretty big, and they've been around for a really long time. So
Yeah.
I guess to the people kind of like wondering what the difference is, I would agree with you. There is kind of like a lot of layers that are involved in like stopping the project, the movement of the project. Like
Right.
you kind of have to depend on other people in different places and figure out how to navigate, like, who am I supposed to ask for this thing. It's like something similar actually happened to me. I didn't have a work laptop for like a week. I had to go like pick it up, but and
See? Oh, tell me, what am I supposed to do?
they had me on a virtual desktop for some time because I didn't know
Oh,
that I was supposed to get a laptop. But my boss had already put in the request, and the thing is that like the request just gets fulfilled like whenever the IT department like figures it out, like
yeah. That
decides to
sounds.
get back to you. But at the same time, I do kind of feel like it's really interesting because of the types of projects that we do. Like because they're bigger, you do kind of end up doing work for some pretty big names, and so that aspect of it is pretty fun. So like even if you are kind of playing a smaller part in this project, I feel like the projects that you are contributing to end up being like this really cool enterprise software that gets used by a lot of different companies. But I don't know if that's different in like electrical versus mechanical and computer science. Like my job is a computer science development like job. So I mean, I think I still like it though, but I can see like the fun of kind of the rush of like working at a smaller company. And I've thought about it too sometimes, like just trying out different things.
Mm-hmm.
Because you do get a lot more, I think, freedom in how you're going to implement stuff. But uh, I don't know. I feel like it's probably good to learn both and see kind of where that takes you. But you did
Try it
you
out.
wore several hats, right? So like before you even started working on Robot, you were a contracting electrical engineer for different projects. So like tell us about how different the job is for like being a contractor and being a lead engineer. I guess we can kind of skip the technical project management.
Yes,
Like,
let's do that.
but at least let's compare like
I don't have much to say on it on there. I don't have much to say on. Hey, you cut this part out. You know what the best part of my day was, and maybe I shared this with you. Was like staring at the because it was in El Segundo where we talked about this. I had an amazing view of LAX, so that was the best part of being a technical project manager.
was the view. I would have sat there and waited for that laptop a little longer.
Maybe they should have gotten me my laptop, I guess.
But yeah, so like let's compare the contractor job versus being like a lead engineer, because I feel like a lot of people are kind of like they're going into EE, or maybe they're graduating and they're applying, and as undergrad I feel like they don't really tell you. I even for computer science, like that was my experience, they don't really tell you like what the differences between the jobs are. So for somebody
Right.
who's like starting their career, like what's kind of like, or and you can actually go into different types of careers, like you don't have to stick to the ones that only you've experienced, but based on people you know or like your network, kind of talk about the differences between the jobs. Like for somebody who's completely lost and doesn't really know, like they're getting the degree already, but they don't really know like what they're
Yeah.
getting.
Yeah, I mean, I was on that boat, and that's why I did that. It's like, well, the year is 2017. I had just graduated as an electrical engineer. Fantastic. What do I do now? And well, the reality is, like, I didn't know. I didn't know where I wanted to go in terms of what industry. I'd been to the careers fairs at Cal State LA, and I'd done that stuff, but working for the power company didn't really interest me. Working for Raytheon didn't really interest me. Working for, other companies that show up to Cast LA didn't really interest me. And I don't know, like maybe I didn't really know what interested me, right? So again, I was really lucky to have met this person in my senior year. I actually met some folks at LACI, the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator. And I knew that that place had a bunch of different small companies, right? And it was a beautiful place. And the idea of working there was really exciting to me. And so I reached out and I said, hey, listen, I just graduated. I'm an electrical engineer now. Like, is there anything that you think I can help you out with? And like, I think the first couple of, or like maybe the first contract I got at LACI was like putting data together. I just crunching data. Like, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember like somebody was like, hey, you're an electrical engineer. You're good with numbers. Like, I need somebody to sort through some data. And I was like, okay, I guess I can do that for a bit. And I did that for a couple of weeks, and all of a sudden I start to talk to more people, and then, hey, you're an electrical engineer. I have a need for this kind of project. Do you think you can do something about this? Or, hey, you're an electrical engineer. Or do you also do software? Can you work on this kind of project? And I still didn't know where I wanted to do, but I was faced with the opportunity of like at least trying out a bunch of different projects. And I knew that none of these roles were full-time gigs or anything like that, but it was still engineering experience that I could put under my belt, right? And so I said, yeah, absolutely, I'm a contractor. What can I help you with? And one of the most exciting ones I actually worked on was working on this bottle, this mechanical, like a no-spill water bottle that had like a solenoid inside. So when you would tilt it, you wouldn't spill any water, and that was fantastic. And I met the guy who started that small company called Lid at LACI. And it was fun. It was just this fun little project I worked on. I also had an opportunity to work on some stuff for it's called escape rooms. Can you imagine working on an escape room? This is great. This is fun stuff. And so me and a couple of other contractors worked on, some escape room traps, and that was really fun and exciting. What else did I work on there? I had an opportunity to work with a company that was building this machine that was going to inject hydropolymer in the grass so that when you watered or when it rained, this hydropolymer absorbed this excess water that the grass didn't use, and it would later, or gradually release it so that you saved water, right? And so tremendous ideas. And so I was just exposed to a lot of different things and a lot of different companies at the incubator, and it gave me an opportunity to really think about more of what I wanted to do. But one thing I knew from working at the incubator was that I really enjoyed working in small companies. I really enjoyed working, with the smaller teams, which I found really exciting, because that's really what the incubator was. I liked the idea of being one of the founding members of a company that could potentially go on to do great, exciting things with the product that you're creating, right? And so that's what I really enjoyed most. And that's really, I think, what I gathered from my initial time as being a recent graduate with, no real direction, I should say. But I feel like I'm very lucky. Like, not everybody gets, those kind of opportunities. And I know that I sought them out. And I know that I also networked and I reached out, but I still feel lucky. Like, it's still this thing where I remember, like, wow, I really was, I found a gig that I enjoyed, like, almost instantly, even uh, it was nerve wracking, of course. It always is being a contractor. It's nerve wracking. You don't know how long the contract's going to be, or whether or not they're gonna like what you designed, because that's happened. Somebody doesn't quite enjoy or understand or like the product that you developed based on their requirements. That's always something you have to deal with. So yeah.
Did you work with like a contracting company for that?
No, I just did that on my own. So that was
Wow,
just
nice. Okay.
you just, to be a contractor, you make some business cards, or you make yourself and you go out, and most importantly, you go out and you network, and you go out and you be social, and you go out and you have conversations. And I know it's probably a really difficult thing for some of us to do, because I know that not a lot of us in the engineering field enjoy that kind of stuff. But if you are but,
That's
but if
true. Right.
but if you are interested in being a contractor, half of the gig is selling yourself. If you can't sell yourself, no one's gonna hire you. If you're not out there looking for work, having conversations with people, exposing yourself to to potential employees, or potentially paying gigs, it's not gonna happen. You can't just sit around and expect that someone's gonna call on you. And so yeah, you gotta be out there. You gotta be a little bit of a salesman.
Did
Gotta
you
be a
ever
little bit of a salesman.
did you ever think that there were any other projects that like you wouldn't be able to finish that you got as a contractor? Like, what if they started paying you and like you totally like bombed it? Like, what do you?
No, there's
If I was
definitely.
a contractor.
Well, look, when you are, I'll tell you this. I'll share a story with you. It was me and a couple of other engineers who actually graduated from Cal State LA as well. I'm a couple of mechanical engineers, and we were all contractors on this. I landed this contract with a very small theater company that wanted us to make them a rotating platform that was automated and electronic. And I was so excited, like, oh my god, I did it. I landed it. We went over to the theater and they showed us what they wanted. And obviously I showed up in like a tie and looked as engineer in my mind as I could possibly look. And sure enough, they were willing to trust us with this project, right? The only thing is that they wanted it done in like 30 days or some ridiculous deadline. And I don't know how I came up with something, and I said, hey, listen, let me go back to we got to go back to our headquarters and work some numbers out. And then we got to work some numbers out, and then we'll give you a call back to so we can discuss whether or not this is something that we can do. We go back and we're all excited. We want to do it, right? Like me and this bunch of electrical engineers that graduated the same year, and we're like, hey, listen, we can do this. It's 30 days, whatever. We won't sleep. No big deal. Just bring coffee. And then when all that excitement died out, maybe a day later, we started to think about it. This is not something we can do on the time that they want us to make it on, with the budget that they want us to do it with. And so it was difficult to admit it, but I had to call that guy back, and he wasn't happy because in his mind, I had committed myself to the project already. And of course, that was a discussion. I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't commit to anything. I simply said I was going to go back. And so you learn to try to identify or to at least suppress a little bit of the excitement early on in your career, to not take on a project that you don't necessarily know if you're going to finish. And obviously that comes with experience. But yeah, I mean, I made that mistake, and almost, I mean, could you imagine taking on that project, and they wanted that thing done in 30 days, and we needed 60, and we didn't realize that we needed 60 until, day 2020 or something. It would have been terrible. I would have been like dying of stress. So, but yeah, it was an interesting thing to start that way. So.
The importance of project estimation.
It was fun. It was just exciting. Imagine somebody's like, you're out sending, you're being a salesman. Again, I said you're selling these services, right? You're selling these engineering services, and somebody responds to you, hey, absolutely, we'll give you a contract. I think it was either the first or second one that I actually was able to land, and I mean, it was sad. I reach out to them and, hey, I'll build you your ramp in 30 days now, absolutely.
So compared to like your lead engineer job, I guess probably I feel like being a lead engineer is not something that people feel like they can do as like an entry level job, right? Or like coming fresh out of undergrad, right?
Yeah, that was an interesting one. Absolutely.
Your experience definitely helped you with the lead engineering job, or was it kind of like unrelated almost?
I think it has to do more with your attitude. It has to do with your personality more than anything. If you, obviously skills are important, but I say that because it's always stories, right? So I was going to start at On Robot, and I was going to work under a senior engineer, which is what I wanted. I wanted to work under somebody who had more experience than I did. I thought it was an exciting thing to be working on these projects, but I also looked forward to having a more senior guy, because at the contractor gigs, I didn't have a more senior guy. It's just we all had to learn things on our own. So I wanted that, a little bit of mentorship. So the week before I'm set to start, this gentleman sends me an email to tell me that he's quitting, and that he would like to have a handoff meeting with me, the junior engineer guy who's just coming in. And I'm like, what do you mean you're quitting? I haven't even started. He quit the Friday before I started. I started on a Monday. And so I had maybe, if I'm honest with myself, I had maybe about a month cushion. Where it was like, hey, you're the new guy, start with these projects. We know we just graduated a year and a half ago, and we understand. Do this simple board. If you need help, we might try to help you out, or reach out to some other engineer that's around here. He might be able to help you out. And I got about a month cushion, as the junior guy. And then things started to get real serious around month 2. Then they started to, hey, let's figure this out. You're the engineer guy. You're the electrical guy here. And again, it's a matter of like sink or swim. I could have very easily cowered it and said, I don't know how to do this. I just, I don't have this kind of experience. Can we bring somebody else in? But I didn't, because that's not my personality. It's not who I am. And so I try to resolve the issues that we were having, whatever they were, in month 2. Even though I didn't have the most amount of experience, I had tremendous research skills that I pride myself on. Tremendous YouTube videos, of course, tremendous everything. There's a lot of resources out there for you. And I'd met some engineers along the way too. Like I'd met senior guys who I could, text or call, and they wouldn't charge me for their opinions on things. And that all goes with being, with marketing yourself, with making yourself available to other people. You network, right? They might not hire you, but hey, I use these, these older gentlemen who were, 30, 25, 30 years of experience in the field. And when I had a question that I felt was worth their time after I'd spent some time researching, and I couldn't quite figure it out, I'm very thankful that they were always very willing to help me out. And so to answer the question about being a lead guy, I don't think that it has to be a mentality. And, you can get into like lead versus senior. I think they gave me the lead title because I didn't have the experience to be a senior guy, but I was the only electrical engineer who would be willing to take on the task that they were handing out. And so I got a lead role as opposed to a senior role. But to be a leader, what do you need to have? I think you need to just, try to be the best possible engineer, and try to be a team member and try to help other people out, and understand that the task is not this solo task. It's a team effort. And yeah, it was an interesting time too, being the lead guy at Onro, because I was lead engineer from the day I started. Nobody really called me that until 2 or 3 months in, when I started to really feel confident about what I was doing, right after spending hours and hours and hours and hours. I didn't sleep much, by the way. But if you're looking to be a lead guy early on in your career, just something's gonna be sacrificed. So.
Like advice for undergrads, like I know there's different concentrations. You can go into like signals, you can go into like embedded systems. Like
Right.
what are kind of those branches, like where do those branches land you in the real world?
I considered being a CS student before I went into computer engineering.
What was you said that you did computer engineering specifically, was your concentration?
That was the concentration I did because I liked both software and hardware. And so I knew that, I got a little bit of both as a computer engineer. I'd like to know how the innards of a computer work, not just, I don't find power like to be the most exciting thing. I didn't want to focus or have my concentration in power. Again, I didn't want to work for the power company. I wanted to, I took a discipline, or rather a concentration, that I thought I would enjoy more in a professional career. That's how I chose computer architecture, but also because I was really into graphics cards and really into like computer chips, and those are topics that are covered in those classes, in those course in the coursework for to be a computer, to have the emphasis as a computer engineer. And yeah, it's helped out professionally, but absolutely, I went that way because it was either pure CS or a little bit of both, and so that's why I chose computer engineering. And to a degree, that's why I do CS now, because I got a lot of electric. Obviously, I'm still an electrical engineer with an emphasis in computer architecture. So most of the coursework was the bulk of electrical engineering topics with a little bit of CS topics. Well, now as a graduate student, it's just pure CS topics, which I thoroughly enjoy. So
yeah, it's a whole like the comparison between like what your undergrad concentration was and like where that's going to take you in a job. Because I don't know personally too much. I mean, I could tell you about computer science, how like
right.
going into mobile app development is vastly different from doing like pure like software or like management, kind of like project management is like really different. So
yeah, well, I can talk about one class. I don't remember the name of it, but professor's name was Parvana, and it was, you were dealing with a microcontroller and you were being taught how to program it. Well, guess what you do as an embedded systems guy? You're programming microcontrollers, and there's inputs and there's outputs in this class, and you got to manipulate the little LED. Remember I was talking about the LEDs? And so now in that class, you're programming the little microcontroller to turn on an LED, or to spin a little motor. And there was a project where we had a little fan that we needed to turn on. Well, that kind of stuff is so relatable in the embedded systems, where sometimes people just want you to turn on a fan with a with a microcontroller. Maybe it's not a little fan, it might be a gigantic fan. Matter of fact, I turned on a fan with a microcontroller earlier today. So there you go.
So now that we kind of talked a little bit about, you working for other companies and you getting, your contractor gigs and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people want to hear about, especially myself, is you starting your own business, which is, Electric Universe.
Right.
I think most of us as engineers in the back of our head are like, man, it would be pretty cool to kind of start our own company, whether it be automotive, electrical power, whatever it is. So can you tell us a little bit about how you sort of started thinking about, hey, this is something I want to do, and how you went about it?
Well, that's a great question, and let me say that I'm influenced in that. I was influenced in that decision a lot by my mom. My mom stopped working for other folks and started working for herself. She owns a daycare now. She stopped working when 13 years ago. She just felt like she just wanted to be her own boss, and she's always pushed me to do the things that make me happy, and being an entrepreneur or whatever, or having your own business and being your own boss is something that I'd see her do. Like, yeah, she works extremely hard and a tremendous amount of hours, but she she has this crazy freedom that I was like, oh wow, this is cool. I'd love to have my own business. And what could my own business be? Well, I happen to be an electrical engineer. Why not sell your electrical engineering services, right? So I had the experience of being a contractor. Why not turn it into a more formal affair? So I registered, but I came up with the name of a business, which, by the way, is based on a book, little known secret, Electric Universe. And yeah, I just filed the proper paperwork with the state of California and the IRS, and I made my own website, and obviously I already had connections in the industry, and so nothing, not I shouldn't say nothing changed, but I kind of laid the groundwork as a contractor to have my own business. It was just more of a formal going from just being a contractor to being to formally being a company, or to formally having your own company. um, it's a difficult thing. I'm not say it's all rose colored glasses, or it's all whatever expression you want to use to signify that it's always the best thing or it's always happy. There are things you sacrifice. Stability, number one, is the first thing that I tell people if they're ever interested in starting their own business. Like, you don't know when the next contract is going to come in, how long the contract is going to last, whether or not people are going to refer you to other folks. So there's a tremendous amount of uncertainties in having your own business. But I feel like if you are providing the services that you say you're supposed to be providing, and that you do a good job and you take pride in what you do, then most of the time people will enjoy what you've provided them, and either ask you to do more work for them, contract your company again for more services, or they'll refer to you to somebody else. But yeah, it's if you have, let me be honest, if you feel like, if you're this type of person, because I feel like this is the type of person I am. If you're the type of person who don't feel like you just want to be a wheel or a cog in the machine, and you want to be a trendsetter, a trailblazer, and you feel that inside, and you don't know how to express it, I feel like it's a mentality. You either want to do it or you don't want to do it. And if you're thinking about doing it, then you're that type of person. It appeals to you. The most difficult thing to do is to get out and do it. The most difficult thing to do is to say to yourself, you know what, I don't want to work at this company anymore. Yeah, the benefits are great, the stability is fantastic, but I want something else. I want to work on my own thing. I want to have my own company. I want to grow it. I want to work on my own projects eventually. I want to have employees maybe. Those things really come. They're in you already, and you're having these thoughts already. And if you're having those thoughts, I say pursue it. Again, fair warning, it's not an easy thing to accomplish, but nothing worth doing is easy, right? Another cliche. If you feel like it's something that you truly want to pursue, do it. I hate when people say, well, it's not stable. Well, absolutely, it's not. Should that prevent you from doing it? Only you can make that decision. Don't let other people make those decisions for you. Go out and do what makes you happy, most importantly.
Probably to get a little more like nitty gritty on it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're taking on a lot of these different projects. I mean, they can vary from A to Z depending on what project it is. How do you generally estimate, like, how do you give project estimates essentially? A customer comes up to you, tells you, hey, I need a project done, XYZ, and you're like, okay, well, do you start to think about how long is it going to take me? Do I need more people? Things like that. So how do you sort of generate an estimate for that customer?
It's a great question. Well, you have to be aware of what skills you possess, where you are, what your strong suit is, what is not, whether or not you actually need to bring in other team members. Do I need a more experienced software guy? Do I need a mechanical guy for these kind of projects? You have to make those decisions. Obviously, it's your company. You have to make those decisions yourself. And so we always want to be honest about all these things. I'm always honest about it. Hey, listen, let me look at this project. Let me see what I can accomplish in the amount. Let me see first and foremost whether or not I can accomplish this in the amount of time that you want me to accomplish under the budget, with the budgetary constraints that you're asking me to do it in, but also me making some money off of it as well, right? And if I'm always interested in the project as well, that always will vary. Personally, again, it's my company. I do what I want to do. If it's something that I'm interested in and I feel like I have the skills, I tend to probably give them a better rate because it's something I want to work on. If I find it exciting, it's not just about making, an extra whatever, $10, $20 an hour. It's about getting that experience as well, right? I mean, I'm still a young engineer. I'm still in a very early, portion of my career. I want that experience. So a lot of the decisions to budget projects also influenced by whether or not I feel like I'm going to get good experience doing it as well. And so that's really how you have to look at it. And to be honest with you, when I get asked, well, how much is the project going to charge? Well, depends on so many factors, as I just mentioned. Do I have to drive somewhere? Is this far away? But I always start with at least, like I talk to older engineers like, hey, how much are you making an hour? Oh, well, I'm making, I usually charge $100 an hour. And then I think to myself, well, if this guy has like 35 years experience, can I get away with charging $100 an hour? Maybe. Depends. How good of a salesman are you, right?
Yeah.
How good of a salesman are you? You have to be a good salesman. You got to get into the moment. Of course, you want to make sure you can accomplish the thing that you say you're going to accomplish. If you are overconfident that you can provide the person or the company with the services that they require from you, charge more. Absolutely. Charge that $100 an hour. Why not? Other people are going to charge you $100 an hour. It's still a negotiation phase. They may not want to pay you $100 an hour because, well, you only have 3 years experience. I can get $150 an hour. Got to do it. Then by all means, go do it. You have to be able to negotiate. Now, if you're willing to come down from that $100 engineer hour, calm down. If you want to charge more, then charge more. But again, it all depends on what you want to get out of the project. It's not just money. It's also the experience for me. So always keep that in mind. Don't just accept the project for the money. Accept it because you're interested in either learning something new or you're interested in working on that project, right? Someone said to me, well, I'll give you $20 an hour to work on this satellite for NASA. I'm in, because I'd love to work on a satellite for NASA, right? I mean, these are just things like that I would love to do.
How do you go about like factoring in materials? Does your company provide materials for the employees when they're like experimenting or trying to figure out how they're going to create a product, or does the company usually pay for it in the estimate, or do they usually have facilities already that you can just bring you and your employees into to like?
Did you say product or purchasing
material
items or materials? Materials?
Yeah.
So this is, I don't like to, again, I hate the bureaucracy. So I buy everything and then I charge. If I need a pump tomorrow, I'm not gonna get on the phone and call the business owner or the person who I'm calling. Hey, listen, this pump, I need it. I'm gonna send you the purchase order so that your people can purchase it. I have this kind of conversation. Listen, I needed to get a pump by today or by tomorrow, or whatever the reason is. I picked the pump that was, that fit the requirements the best and wasn't exactly the most expensive pump. And so people enjoy that. Sometimes most of the time you'll get like, oh, fantastic. Thank you for not involving me in all that process. Some people don't enjoy that. Some people say, well, you should have asked me to do it, but fine. I won't do it again. But most of the time, if I can get something done quickly, if I can provide the materials, I don't like to be bureaucratic about it. I just go and do it. And I'll discuss this too prior to, like, during the contract, during the negotiation phase. Hey, listen, I'm going to buy everything we need and then I'm going to send you a bill. And obviously, well, if it's something over, $500, please call me or whatever the reason may be. But that's kind of, it's with my workflow, right? It goes with my workflow. I don't like to stop that workflow. If I can purchase it right now and then, bill you later for it, and that you're going to get billed for something, then it's all fine and dandy. But again, have those conversations beforehand as well. Don't just go and do it. Oh, I bought this $3,000 machine that we need. Well, I didn't want you to spend $3,000 on that machine.
So from a business standpoint, did you have to like save up a certain amount of capital before you started your business, or did you do it through loans? Like, do you mind telling us a little bit about like, like where does this money come from to, that you buy stuff with initially when you're just starting out with the business? Because I've done like smaller robotics projects, even for like Baja, and it gets really expensive really quickly. Like it can get out of hand so fast. So how do you like, where does that money come? Is it business loans? Like how much do you recommend somebody starting out with before they go into a business? And like what was
Yeah.
your journey with that?
So I started with, I would say $2,000, around $2,000. And why $2,000? I just felt like that was a good sum of money to start with. But now I just use my credit card and make sure that to pay that when I never do to purchase anything. Or what you do sometimes, depending on the person that you're working with, is you send them a purchase order. I have my account with entities such as Granger or DigiKey or Mauser, and I'll just send in the bill directly for those kind of things. If some people prefer that, like I'll get the items right now, but then you send them the purchase order, and then the company takes care of it immediately. So it just depends on who you're working with. But that to really answer the question, don't let it be something that prevents you from working on something. You got to find a way. Try to find a way. Always try to find a way. If it's not $2,000, $200, then work on smaller project. Start somewhere, but just start.
Let's say someone sees this podcast, as they will, and they're like, you know what? I love this Ricardo guy. He speaks
Yeah, they do.
language,
I get that a lot.
very well spoken. What if they wanna work for you? They want to work for Electric Universe or work alongside with you. How would they go about maybe reaching out to you and sort of starting that conversation with you?
So I have a website, electricuniverse.org, and I use, most of the time, I use folks as contractors. Like Electric Universe itself is a two-person entity at the moment because obviously I'm still doing other things. My focus is not 100% on growing the company right now. But if people want to reach out to me, I am always willing to exchange information. Again, you gotta be social, you gotta network. If it's not through me, if I understand that maybe you have some services that or some skills that you can provide to somebody, you're a mechanical engineer, maybe it's somebody I know along the way that could use your services, or even me myself, a month or 2 months from now. It's always something. It's important. If you want to reach out, reach out. I can never guarantee you employment because I'm not at that stage in my company yet. I'd love to. I'd love to employ some people. I'd love to employ some golden eagles. I'd love to do that. Absolutely. And I think it's something it's a goal of mine. So, but yeah, absolutely. Reach out, electricuniverse.org.
Cool. Thanks for that. And aside from, like you said, it's not your main focus being Electrical Universe. You're also a graduate student. So as a graduate student, what are some of the things that you've learned? What are some of the things you want to learn as far as like being a graduate student?
Yeah,
Oh man. So
oh,
here's yeah. Say like for some reason I thought graduate school was going to be easier than undergraduate school. I don't know. In my mind, that made sense. Through finding a school, through the application process, all the way through about the first or second minute of my first class. And I realized, well, this is not going to be easier than undergraduate. I thought it was going to be easier because it's less units, but my God, it's hard. It's not easy. It's a difficult thing to do, obviously. But if you are set on being a graduate student, why not? I'm interested in, again, I mentioned this earlier. I wanted that, that pure emphasis in CS because it's something that I thought I would enjoy. I considered being a CS undergraduate, and I didn't do it because I went with computer architecture. Computer engineering, sorry. And so now I felt like I was a good point in my career and in my life to do it. And I decided to research some schools, and I settled on Syracuse, and everything has been challenging. I'm gonna lie, it's a difficult thing to do, considering how much stuff I already do. Adding a graduate school was not an easy thing, but again, no one's forcing me to do graduate school. Like, it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and so I just decided this was the year to do it, and I actually started doing it before the pandemic. This is not a pandemic decision, by the way. I started grad school before the pandemic. So, if you are interested in graduate school, figure out if what school you want to go to, figure out what exactly you want to study, research it a little bit, and then apply. Again, if it's in your mind to do it, then do it. I would always recommend, absolutely. The more educated you are, the better. The more beneficial it is for your career, absolutely.
What do you think that your thesis is going to be on, and like how are you going to use what you learned in either your business or your projects?
Ooh, in graduate school? Oh my goodness, absolutely. I mean, every Syracuse, it's all project based, and so I am touching things that I already implement. With Electric Universe, building apps. I'd never really built apps before, believe it or not. And so one of the things that they teach you here is mobile application development, and it's difficult to understand and difficult to learn, but it's really fun once you do. And now it's like, well, now I can now, hey, Electric Universe provides applications as well.
There you go.
Mobile app development with Electric Universe. Right. Yeah,
That's cool.
Do
absolutely.
you have like some special thing that you know for sure, like you want to do some kind of like, you're doing AI, right? I mean, I know app development is fun and everything, but like, is there some kind of like bigger project that you have like your heart set on that you think would be like, oh, it would be so cool to like?
Yeah. So in terms of projects, I think that what I really here's what I really want. Like I've thought about this a lot. I want Electric Universe to just dedicate itself to animatronics. Um, because I really enjoy animatronics, and that's always been the goal of Electric Universe is to build my own products. Right now, we function as, a service provider, but the goal is to make it to branch out and actually do animatronics, right? And so a lot of the programming I'm learning here, focuses on C sharps, C, which is really useful. Now I've used C before, but my God, they go into much greater depth than I don't think I would have until probably later on in my career, or gained the experience or the skills that I have just from having to solve problems in a very formal way here at Syracuse. And so that's what I want Electric Universe to be able to do. Number one, I want to be able to build animatronics. I love stuff for Halloween or Christmas, and I'd love to be able to work on those kind of things. There's this gentleman by the name of Steve Kochi, who I think I met on LinkedIn, and he wrote a book called DIY Animatronics, and it's a great book, and it shows you how to do a bunch of different things, and it's aimed at people who are not necessarily engineers, and so I feel like as an engineer, I probably have a little bit of a leg up on that. But that's my ultimate goal. One of my goals with Electric Universe is to be able to build animatronics, and the other one is to crank out content on YouTube. And the reason for that is because I love teaching, and I feel like I could make a dent in the content material that exist on YouTube. I feel like I can explain things in a way that it's not just educational but also fun. Because a lot of stuff I feel like I see some YouTube videos and come on, make this a little more fun. It's a little more exciting than what I see sometimes, and I feel like I can fill that void. And somebody's gonna take my idea now. Oh, write this down. Electrical engineering topics, more fun. Got it. So those are the two things that I feel like I want to do the most. So
You ever watch what's his name, Electro Boom? You
oh,
ever watch?
Electro Boom. Yeah. He's
Yeah.
hilarious.
I
That guy's funny. Absolutely.
love that guy. I'm not an electrical, I'm a mechanical, but something about his channel just makes me
Isn't
so.
it? The guy is entertaining, and he's talking about like these. Obviously, if you've never seen Electro Boom, go watch it. He just does like the craziest things, but
Oh,
he's
I know
teaching
this.
you. You've seen it?
He's always blowing stuff up. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Electro Boom, and it's just so much fun, right? And it's just exciting and fun stuff. And I
Oh,
watch a lot of these guys, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can contribute in my own way. I'm not reinventing the wheel or presenting new topics, but I feel like I can present the subject matter in my own unique, fun, and exciting way.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you talked about the YouTube channel because that was pretty much our next question.
Yeah, segue.
Perfect segue. So pretty much, I mean, that leads us to our last question. I mean, you're a man of many hats,
Oh,
and we're interested to know like where do you see yourself in the future?
so I have so many interests, but I think that professionally, I'd hope that in a few years, the Electric Universe is just its own entity. I hope that the YouTube thing takes off. I don't know. You never know. But that's what I'd like to be. I'd like to just be building animatronics and making some fun educational videos on YouTube. And professionally, that's where I see myself, I think. For a while, I considered being more formally involved in politics. I considered potentially being a council member in the city where I live. Uh, I'm not saying, ruling that out. I think it's still something that I'm really passionate about and really excited about. But I feel like I scale back and try to focus on one thing and make that thing happen before I start taking on other challenges.
Yeah.
So one thing at a time right now. So Electric Universe, first and foremost, finish grad school, and then make that stuff happen with Electric Universe, and hopefully at some point, become, maybe enter politics. I don't know. It's just a crazy pipe dream of mine. Who knows?
That'd be cool to see an
Yeah.
engineer in
Yeah,
politics.
I mean,
And by trade, we are rational people, so it might be a
So-
good thing to take.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing, right? I mean, like, you would think that more engineers would be into politics, at least. I mean, like, they're pretty smart. They, like, infrastructure wise, I feel like the planning that goes into it is kind of the same strategy that you come up with a project, right? Like,
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if, like, to go off of what you said, I don't know why there aren't more of us in politics. Maybe we just enjoy being engineers too much. But I do
Yeah.
feel like, absolutely, I feel like the mentality that we have in terms of problem solving, right? I mean, I always think to myself, what the city needs is a root cause analysis to really figure out what's going on here. And I'm like, why more engineers are not into politics? I can't answer that question for you, but I can tell you that this one is. I'm extremely into politics. I love talking about it, and not just talking about it. I love to actually be involved and do things about it. So.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Well,
you-
you've heard it here first. Ricardo is running in 2024 for
2024, yes. You heard it here first.
yes.
Yeah.
I am officially announcing my candidacy.
Yeah, he comes up in a lot of articles. So if you're really on the political train, you should check them out. He has several on. Let me see. I have the links here. You come out on the LA Times. You came out on.
Yeah, I did. It's funny. This is super related. A gentleman reached out to me. Another electrical engineer reached out to me based on this latest LA Times article that I was in. And we were having this conversation, like, why more engineers are not into politics. But it was interesting because I'd never met this gentleman. He just looked me up online. He found the website and he sent me an email. And so there you go, 2 electrical engineers talking about not electrical engineering, but politics.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of like ethics stuff that goes into it too, but we'll stay away from that conversation.
For now.
For now, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, hopefully we'll get an update from you in the future on how your company is doing and after you graduate, and maybe Electric Universe will be another big name.
If there's one thing you can count on, is me talking. I'll gladly join you guys again. This is always fun to me. I always love talking to other engineers, but also other Golden Eagles.
Thank you for spending some time with us, Ricardo, and this has been Staying Muddy Podcast episode. Is this episode 6? I lost count. I'm losing count.
I think it's 6. Episode
I think
6.
it's episode 6 now.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Ricardo. Really do appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. I appreciate you guys inviting me.
Cool. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Staying Money Podcast. I'm Mr. You can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok with the handle Baja SCE. You can also check out our website, Baja SCE, if you want to check out more stuff about our team, and we also have some merch on there as well. You can also join our Staying Money Podcast subreddit if you'd like. Thanks again for listening. See ya.
The views, information, or opinions expressed during the Staying Muddy podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Baja SAE and Cal State Los Angeles.